So I am disassembling my charger box that I had showed you on an earlier video, my electric fencing setup. I've pulled out the ground rod. Here you can see it's a T-handled ground rod. It's about 3 feet long. That's easy to stick into the ground. It's got a point on the end of it, or a fairly dull point, but it certainly pushes down into the ground easily with the T-handle on top. So that's where I hook my grounding clip once I set the fence up for next spring. And I've taken the battery out of this box. Got the battery here. I'll put that inside somewhere. I have a garage that I'll put that in. I don't set that directly on the cement floor in the garage, as that can kind of discharge the battery and weaken it over time. So I'll set that on some kind of a pallet or a board down on the floor and keep that for the winter, and then charge that back up again in the spring to hook it up to this system again. So there's everything. It's all unclipped. I just throw those things in this box. It's got a roof on it. And what I'll end up doing is I'll end up putting this box over in the pig's hut for the winter. That's got a roof on it, and that'll keep this protected. So that's all it needs. It just needs to be out of the weather for the winter. I have my little electric building there, my solar electric building, where I have the fence charger. And then I think I showed you on a video before, I have a fence around here that has 3 strands of nylon fencing that's electrified. It's got some conductors in the nylon rope, and these are clips and posts that I got from Premier One fencing supplies. So what I do is I go around and I unclip these out of these harp clips. I'll follow this whole fence around, I'll unclip those, and now that's loose to the side. I take out the top strand, I lay it on the ground around the entire perimeter of the fence, and then I have a reel that I also got from Premier One fencing. I didn't have one of these the first couple years, but I found pretty quickly that they're a really good asset to have here. It's got a crank on it, and I can crank that wire or that rope right onto that spool, and I'll fill up that spool, and then it stays stored on there until I set up the fence for next year. It's got a strap on it that I can strap that around my neck or around my shoulder, and I can walk around the fence line after I've unclipped this top rope, and I'll start to reel that on. I'll go back around, do the second row by unclipping it, and reel that onto the reel, and I'll get down to the bottom row and finish that up. So I'll see if I can put a little video on here of that as well. So I've got all the wire reeled up. I've got all the posts out. I went around and pulled those out. They pull out really easily. Every time when I pull these out, I look for any damage or anything like that. I had 2 of them that had some damage to them. They were broken about ground level. And the only reason that that happened, as far as I know, is there was a tree limb that fell in that area during the winter. And then I think one of them may have been run over by my son on his dirt bike and snapped off that way. So I had 2 posts that were cracked, and they were both cracked about ground level. I used them for this year. I knew they were broken, and I just left them in place. You could reuse those, but I like to call those, I guess, for the winter. I'll throw those out somewhere, and I'll either replace them, or if I don't need that many this coming season, I will just leave those out of the lineup. So there you go. I'll take these harp clips off, and they're definitely reusable. They get a little brittle sometimes, so when I go to take those off, it's possible that one of the ears that clips to the pole will snap, but if I'm careful, they'll usually come off, and I can reuse those on a different post if I have one that breaks on another post that I need to replace. So here we are on a wet fall morning, about mid-November. Sometimes this time of year we've already got snow on the ground, but I have moved the pig's pasture from one location to the other. I don't have any fencing up. I'll put that up in the spring, but in the spring when I go to set the fencing, sometimes the ground is still frozen. So I've gotten these posts in for the fence before the freeze this winter. And then in the spring when I come out, if the ground's still frozen, I can still clip the lines into those posts. I just don't want the lines up all winter long. The UV light's pretty hard on them, and the snow packs in and around the wires, and it drags things down, and it would probably break some of the clips on these posts. So I don't want those wires up through the winter. But I've come out here and I've set these posts all around. There's a little bit of brush I'll still cut down either this fall or in the spring that's still in the pasture area. The rest of it, I've cut all that, the bramble down at least, and the pasture goes around. I've reset their hut in here, and I have some places where I'm ready to put up some corral boards, we'll call them that, because when they first come in the spring, I want to have boards around there that hold them in a smaller area until they get used to being here on pasture. So we're all set up for the fall. I will show you some short video clips after this that will show you what I had to do to prep this area for this setup now and for the setup in the spring. Yeah, I forgot to tell you, this is my equipment. I have a brush saw, and what I've got on the end of that is a tri-cutting blade. It's been sharpened a number of times. I have lots of rocks back here, and I hit those rocks. And then of course my fuel mixture and some hearing and eye protection. The hearing protection is Bluetooth, and I'll hook that up to my phone, and that way I can hear anything that's going on. If I need to hear a phone call or if I need to hear a text coming in or whatever, I can do that.